Hello and welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on Twitter at iPropertyRadio or hello@iPropertyRadio.com. I'm now joined by Louisa Dickins, co-founder of LMRE. Louisa, thank you so much for joining us today from a snowy London.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And yeah, London is looking pretty beautiful, but it is absolutely freezing.
Yeah, well, it's freezing here, but we haven't got the snow yet. So first of all, just for people who aren't familiar, LMRE is a well-known brand in the UK, but maybe not so familiar in Ireland, even though you do work internationally. So you might just give our audience an overview of LMRE.
Yeah, of course. So LMRE, we are a specialist property technology recruitment firm. So we first started in the UK, then expanded across Europe, and then from relationships with us expanding US companies in the UK and Europe, we then were like, what are we doing just over here when the Proptech scene in the US is about probably 5 years in advance of us? So then, launched a year and a half across North America. And now as of 2 months ago, we launched in APAC. And then there's 3 core parts of our business. So one is helping early to later stage property technology startups to grow. So that can be across all roles from deep tech, like product engineers, to the salespeople, the customer success, the strategy. Second part of our business is, and I think one of the most exciting parts, especially since the year of COVID, which has really pushed forward digitalization of the traditional real estate and consultancy world, is we work like the Jones Lang LaSalle's, the Oxford Properties, when they need to digitalize, and that could be globally. So that could be a super junior data scientist to who on earth is putting together their digitalization strategy. And then the third part of our business is working with the VCs. So that could be the likes of Metaprop, AO, Fifth Wall. So we could help them out hiring, a principal, so the person who's sort of looking, how they're going to raise their funds, to an analyst who's looking at, what Proptechs they're going to invest in. So those are the 3 core areas, and it sort of changes every single day as more more investment and development goes into this space. So it's been a hell of a journey, but really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm delighted to be able to speak to you today because I can see not just the international reach, but also you're actually spread right across the entire ecosystem. So you've got the startups working directly with them. You have the VCs who are funding and in a way kind of almost shining a light on the future of the industry. But also you're working with the traditional industry to bring them along. So you've a really good overview. So I mean, really to start with, where do you think we are? And this might be too broad a question, so let's just take it from the UK. Where do you think we are in terms of tech adoption across the built environment?
That is a very good question, and it's a very difficult question to answer. Where are we? We've definitely seen an increase in adoption, like I mentioned, since the pandemic. I think it's also in certain areas. I think everyone's talking about the future of the workplace, so there's been massive growth in sort of tenant engagement. I also think especially since the change in president in the US, there's going to be a massive shift of investment into climate tech as well. We've already seen in Europe, like the Nordics, and I think the UK, adoption in climate tech or, ESG, everyone loves talking about it. Do we all quite know what that is yet? I don't know. It's like a buzzword. Those definitely are the 2 growth areas I've seen in adoption and also investment. And it's high on everyone's agendas. I think if you sort of follow where investment is going, that's where you'll see further adoption. So I think in 2019, there was $19 billion that went into PropTech, and there was further 32 billion that went in 2020. And we're only I presume, unless something crazy happens, we're just going to see that investment go up. And that's obviously, what's driving the VC community and the major funds to invest is the promise of ever increasing returns in a market that's sort of ripe for reform and innovation. So like I mentioned, climate tech, sustainability, and construction tech as well. But I would say it's across like all verticals, and every single day I'm introduced to a new vertical with a sexy new name, which has tech at the end of it. I think it's on everyone's sort of agendas. But yeah, the more investment goes in, the more products we're going to see, which is super exciting.
Yeah, do you know, I'm actually trying not to engage with all of the new buzzwords that have tech at the end of it, because I think, in a way that just highlights how immature this sector is. The fact that, it would be almost like, a writer calling themselves, in tech because they're writing on a computer 20 years ago, and it feels like that, we're talking about technologies that would be just ubiquitous to the operations of the job. So actually I think the hallmark for success for Proptech and all of these other sectoral techs will be when we stop using those words. That's just how business operates. But I think it's really interesting that you're seeing across these ESG metrics and all around the sustainability. I think it's really interesting that you're seeing both an increase in adoption and an increased focus from the VCs, because those two strands hardly ever work side by side. Now, maybe the pandemic is shining a light and making it easier for the industry to know where they need to be and for the VCs to know where the funds need to go. But, generally speaking, if we look back historically, not just Proptech, but all tech investment, generally the VCs could be almost a decade ahead of where the industry adoption is. So if we're starting to see those streams run side by side, I think that's really exciting. And, maybe we did a little bit in fintech as well. So maybe that's what is in store for Proptech over the next number of years. But I think that's really exciting, because it will take away this challenge of digital transformation across the industry, because they will understand that this is how we do business. It has become such a cliche to say that the pandemic has accelerated the rate of tech adoption across the built environment, but it absolutely has, particularly if you're talking about traditional estate agency, right through to traditional construction sites. It absolutely has accelerated. There's no way meetings would have been done via Zoom. People were flying to different countries for site visits and site walkthroughs. That's never, I think, going to be a necessary feature again. I hope we don't go backwards.
Well, then also with that, it goes back down to the sustainability, preserving the world we sort of live in, that, technology is really going to help with that. I also think going back to, these funds and the VCs, VCs should be on our, ahead of, the traditional funds and agencies, but they're really working hand in hand to obviously, Fifth Wall, they've raised a climate tech fund, which obviously focus completely on that sort of space. And they're the people that we're sort of working with to raise it, a lot of them from the sort of traditional sort of real estate area. So it's really exciting. And I think the beauty of this space is that it's all about collaboration. It's all about everyone sort of championing each space, but working together. So if we see more of that, it should be happy days for the progressiveness and innovation in this space.
Yeah, there are a couple of services that feed into a growing or a sector that really you can read a lot into, and I think recruitment is one of those. So, in terms of can you share with us maybe who's hiring at the moment? What types of startups are they? More established? Have they funding? What's the profile? And feel free to name drop.
Yeah, I can't be careful about name dropping because I don't want to give any biases to some of my clients, and our clients completely sort of vary to, God, you've got the guys at BTS and Y Squad. I mean, their success stories, their product isn't super technical, but they serve a clear value proposition within leasing and connectivity, which is what we all sort of need. Who is hiring? That's a really good question. So to give you, we were just looking at who, I guess, for our business, how it's grown. Our roles are up by nearly 200% this month to last year, which is crazy. So we got a team. So our business started 2 years ago. Our team's now 20 people. We've got 5 more people starting next month. We've got a further 5 to make sure that we're delivering. What roles are being hired for? So if we focus on the startups, so that could be some from early stage one. There's a business called Instagram, which does deposit free renting onto the desks, which obviously lots of people want now because there's a lot, no one wants to do the upfront cost, especially in this sort of market, no one knows when they're going back. So they could hire for someone who's launching a product, head of business development, to, at the end of the day, in this environment, everyone needs to keep growing their product. So they all constantly need good product people, good data scientists, good engineers. And then you have your later stage ones like BTS and Y-Squad who are launching across the world. So they're going to need country managers. But with that, they need all the other tech support, salespeople, customer success. And then you have obviously the big, larger funds like Oxford Properties, which I think really have been pushing forward and in making sure they are one step ahead of other businesses and digitalizing. So they could hire anyone from, someone in like IoT, data. It's at the end of the day, it's all things come down to data. That's where the skill shortages are, and that's where we all consistently see hires. And then you have the VCs who, they're constantly trying to find good people who can sort of, with experience in successful exits and sort of, I guess, raising the funds. But honestly, I couldn't pinpoint where we're seeing most hires. What I could pinpoint is where we're seeing most skill shortages, and that is the data scientist space. Really good SaaS sales professionals, and where else would I say? Good product managers. Those are the three areas of skill shortages. And I think a lot of it comes down to one, this Proptech industry. Within real estate software, you had the first generation of the MRI and Yardies. You have that, but then otherwise, in the past sort of 3 years, there's not so many people, and if we were focused in the UK, have been doing it. In the US, fine, you can find someone who's been doing it for a lot longer, but that's where the skill shortage is, because it's just such an early stage in this business. So for a lot of these roles, when it comes down to data or SaaS sales, we're bringing them in from other industries which are similar. So like this, fintech, that can you move over? You've got to look at what sort of products are out there, what sort of similar sort of sales cycles. And then data scientists, what are the big data companies? Where can we headhunt them at? And a lot of talent, at the end of the day, talent will follow investment. That's why more people want to go into sustainability space. Hopefully for ethical, moral reasons, but also because they'll follow investment. So I think we're seeing a lot of people realizing the mass expansion investment of this sector and how big it can be. So it's actually a lot easier to headhunt people from the sector. Hey, have you seen what's happening? $32 billion investment. What we saw in fintech is now going to happen to PropTech. And so that sort of piece is moving quite well for us. But yeah, it's across the board. We're seeing mass hires, and we're going to continue to see it as well.
I think it's interesting when you talk about people coming from other sectors, because traditionally, if we were looking at this 10 or 15 years ago, all middle to senior management across property management, construction, and property development generally, unless they came from an accounting background, they tended to be people who were born and raised in property, or certainly from early career right up through in property. So you didn't have many people, certainly, unless it was maybe on a marketing role or something, you didn't see people jump industries in their 40s,
Yeah.
And so if you'd been in retail, suddenly jumping into construction, it just didn't happen. Whereas I think technology has been a great enabler, that actually it is making that really necessary. And I see the drive, particularly on the construction tech side, everything related to offsite construction methodology. Suddenly you're bringing in anybody who has a strong manufacturing and process driven industry. So those transferable skill sets are becoming really interesting. And
Yeah.
are you seeing a trend, because, obviously we're all in lockdown, we're all operating remotely. Is that reflected in the roles that you're recruiting for now at the moment? How location specific are they, both for a region and for a country?
Yeah. And this really good question. And all businesses are open to sort of remote working now. All our clients realizing, what, we don't have to pay a London salary, or in the US. Why? They're saying to us, fine, as long as they're based on the east or west coast, that's fine with us, and they can work in our time zones. But ideally, don't want to pay a San Francisco salary or New York salary, which is on average about 50% more than you have in the other sort of states, you know, and we're seeing so many people relocate to like Denver, Atlanta, you know, Austin. One, because there's like a, you know, they get more like value for their buck at the end of the day. It's better lifestyle for them, and they can now have access to all the job opportunities. So yeah, I think it's the same thing for universities as well. Lots of businesses used to target universities, and now all these students realizing they don't have to go to that university to be headhunted. You know, they don't have to just go to MIT or something like that. So the remote workforce, I think, will stay on. You know, everyone talks about, you know, are we ever going back to the office? We definitely will. That's where innovation all happens. That's where also, if you want to hire this young talent, they want to be around people. They don't want to just be, you know, working on their own. Like, I miss my team so much. I'm right now in like my room in sort of southwest London, and I spend my time on Zooms to my team, and I think it completely sucks. And if I ever want to maintain my team at LMRE, I know I'm going to have to get them back in the office as soon as it's safe to. I think going on to what you were sort of saying about attracting talent from other industries should probably bring us on quite well into a big issue which we've had in real estate, and now we're slowly addressing, and that's obviously the diversity issue, you know, of the, whether it's sort of gender, race, you know, sexual orientation, but also like diversity will bring innovation and fresh sort of ideas and perspectives, which is what I think this real estate technology industry really, really needs. I don't know if you sort of agree with that as well.
Oh, I definitely agree. Through Proptech Ireland, we have had contacts through about 140 to 150 startups. 4 of those, actually 3 of those have been female led, and 1 has had a senior female person in it. So yeah, our hit rate for, I mean, diversity covers a whole manner of things, but in Ireland, what I'm seeing is gender diversity for Proptech is so far below even the shockingly low gender diversity in generic tech. So yeah, this is definitely an issue, right down to actually on this podcast. You know, we actually are ascribed to a Women on Air ethos, where we are constantly looking to showcase female voice in the industry, particularly in construction. And it can be difficult because it is such construction obviously is still very male dominated, but I'm surprised at how male dominated Proptech is. I just wasn't expecting that, because across property management we're seeing a really good spread. So yeah, I'm really surprised by that, actually. So are you telling me you're seeing, you know, in terms of where are you seeing the lack of diversity overall? And I'm sure this will vary country to country, but you know, where are the big problem areas?
Well, I think startups are known for just being chaotic. One thing I will really what I do admire about startups, that a big thing which they talk about is sort of getting their sort of culture right, and like making sure they have diverse teams, and they're doing a really good job. And I think that comes down to fundamentally at the beginning of their growth cycle, in, you know, they make sure they have like where it's a head of diversity or head of culture, and that's brought into like step 1 or 2 of the interview process, which really sort of promotes, you know, inclusiveness. They also make sure they tap into different sort of, whether it's like demographics and programs, so they're not just headhunting. There's like so many like biases which big funds and institutions go to. If you just look on their job specs, they have like, right, I want to see someone coming from X university, but like, I don't think the best talent will come to, this comes down to educational experience. Like, if you're going to an innovative business or whatever it may be, it comes down from like job experience as well, and life experience. And like, I'm not saying it comes down just purely like it means, say, a data scientist working, you know, the work that some of these young people do outside of, you know, going to university. It's amazing, all these online programming courses you can do. It doesn't just come down to universities. One thing which I'm seeing a lot of the larger businesses do, global agencies, they're trying to ensure that their senior change management, you know, has a women ambassador or something like that, because look, yeah, again, your young talent, they don't want to go work for a business just full of like white men. I've had so many people turn these roles down because they're like, that's not the sort of environment which I want to go into. And it's definitely something which we're going to see a further growth in Cushman and Wakefield. And I guess Great Portland Estates, they have, cultural diversity and innovation ambassadors, across all the teams. And that's really important. It could be, we go back to the idea of inclusiveness, collaboration, and that's going to come down from having people in every single team, promoting these things, coming up with new initiatives. And that's a tiny thing that doesn't cost the business money, but it does it sets like a sentiment for it to ensure it's happening across all teams. So I think super important, but it's really hard. And for us to provide diverse talent, it's so impossible. What you said, technology, male, real estate, changing, but fairly white and male. So we're now working with various associations globally. So there's a great business called Collective that has
apologies, Louisa, your line just broke up there. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of recording remotely. So can you just repeat the name of that organization, please?
Oh, perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, the Proptech Collective. We have something super exciting coming out this week, which I will share with you when this comes out. But very exciting report, which hasn't been done yet in the world. But there's something like 250 startups part of it, all the funds, REITs, institutions in Canada are part of it. And then they do constant webinars, forums, panels, but it's a consistently active group. Anyone's welcome to join. And when we say diverse, it's not just a women's group, okay? Because there's loads of these just women's organizations. It's men, white people, everyone's part of it. And that's really helped with collaboration and innovation. There's other, there's so many associations people can sort of tap into. And that's what we've really been focusing on as a business now, to try and ensure that when we're doing a shortlist, it is diverse, but it is pretty difficult. And some of our clients will pay us literally about 10% more to ensure we find them, a female head or something like that.
Do you think the diversity conversation is on the right track? Because look, I think it's really important that we talk about gender, ethnicities, whether it's hiring people with disabilities. Quite frankly, if I wasn't self-employed for the last decade and a half, I would have been a terrific token hire for any business. I know this, but look, what I'm seeing in Proptech, particularly, there's such a focus on data as well. Are we seeing a lack of diversity of mindset, of patterns of thought, how people think, how people approach things? Because, we're seeing a lot of engineering mindsets coming through. And, one thing we know about innovation is that you need diverse thinking. Is there a focus on that within traditional organizations?
Yeah, so I did. Yes, there is. I think they're all trying to work out how can they you can't tell someone to think creatively, but what you can do, you can set an environment where you give them access to what it could be. You could bring startups in to talk to the younger people, your business, be like, hey, have you ever thought about this or this sort of product? So I did a presentation to REAMTech, which is Real Estate Investment Management Tech Associations here, AXA, Viva, PGIM, they're all part of it. And they all want to know how can they make people inside that organization think more creatively. And I was like, okay, before I did this presentation, we did a survey where we were asking 50 surveyors, analysts who we've all placed into a startup company. How did they make the move? What can the businesses do? And they said, one, having senior change management, really sort of basically doing talks on the importance of innovation, how to basically reimagine the future of real estate. Another one was sort of upskilling. So that could be sort of giving them access to different courses online, or just talking about the differences. Anthony Slumbers does amazing, the Real Innovation Academy. There's so many really short machine learning courses, which will give someone a little flavor of what sort of roles you can go into. So a lot of it comes down to early stage education, and then giving people all the access to data and learning facilities. But at the end of the day, you can't tell them to think, to be inquisitive of it. You would hope if you give them all the tools, they would go use them, and then hopefully that should start progressing them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a big part of it is, you mentioned there that some companies come to you and say, we want to hire from X university or maybe from X institution. And to me, that's how you get more of the same. But look, this is something that I could talk to you all day about. But unfortunately, we do need to wrap up. But before I let you go, Louisa, because you have this lovely spread, across the entire ecosystem, what are the lessons that need to be learned, from the real estate world for traditional players who actually want to make the move towards Proptech?
Traditional, okay. I think, for people looking to enter this space?
Yeah, or even for traditional firms that haven't started to dip their toe in the water yet, in terms of digital transformation, what do they need to know? What do they need to be aware of?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing they need to do is make sure their CEO or whoever it is fully on board with digitalization, looking at timeframes of it, and then promoting it across their whole business. I think a lot of these players are, they're watching a few other businesses do it first before they start investing in technology or adopting it. And those are the guys who are going to actually end up losing profit, market share. So I'm not saying it's a race, but people definitely need to be taking it seriously because it's happening right now. What can they do? I think they need to start talking to these VCs. They need to start talking to these saying influencers, but the thought leaders, and then start trialing to go meet these startups. There's some amazing success stories. Like I mentioned sort of ETS, I mentioned sort of Wide Scores. It's amazing. Like talk to the big software businesses if you're worried about the startups. Everyone's using Voyanta, MRI, Yardi, but go talk to them, go pilot them, bring them in, and just everyone's going to have reservations. There's no perfect product out there, but until they know what problem you have in your business, they can't help you, can't tell you about a product that could help deliver on that. So go speak to people, go learn.
Louisa, you forgot the most important advice, and that is to listen to your own podcast, the Propcast, which we do feature on iPropertyRadio.com. And it's excellent. Are you starting into your, what season are you?
We've got season 4 coming out nearly now, and then we have already our lineup for season 5. So anyone listening today, check out the Propcast, which I'm host of, and have it. Basically, it's about bridging the gap between the real estate professionals, the technologists, and the VCs globally. And if you want to hear about certain trends, topics, or from certain businesses, just shoot us an email at LMRE. Podcast.co.uk, and we'll come back to you. But Pammy, looking for ideas and check it out.
Super. And I can definitely recommend that. It's one of my favorites, and it's one that I'm subscribed to. Even before it went on to the iProperty Radio channel, I was subscribed to that. So I love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us here today. That was Louisa Dickins, co-founder of LMRE. That's it from us this week. Thank you for listening into Property Matters on Dublin South FM. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iProperty Radio, or indeed email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Also, my thanks to Peter Rice on sound and show producer Katie Tallon of Hear Me Roar Media. We're back at the same time next week. For myself, Carol Tallon, and all the team here, stay safe.